The Trump administration appears to be in some hot water with a federal judge over deportation flights to Central America.
We're not stopping. I don't care what the judges think. I don't care what the left thinks. We're coming.
We're on very dangerous ground here. This is as lawless an action as the administration has taken.
In March of 2025, the Trump administration, determined to push forward with its deportation agenda, turned to a centuries-old wartime law, the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, to deport alleged Venezuelan gang members, even after a federal judge said no. And now, in a major legal turn, the Supreme Court has ruled that these deportations can move forward, but potential deportees must get due process, and has also decided that the U.S. must facilitate the return of a man mistakenly deported to El Salvador. The last time this law was used? World War II, when it played a key role in the internment of tens of thousands of Japanese Americans, most of them U.S. citizens. Today, Trump is applying the law in a way that's never been seen before, outside of wartime. So why is Trump bringing it back now? And what does this law actually say? A scene like no other. Hundreds of immigrants flown to a mega prison in El Salvador, Trump's latest move in his immigration crackdown. All filmed as part of a camera-ready spectacle, with his allies even praising the moment.
First of all, the video, what a beautiful thing to see.
It's incredible.
Right?
This comes after Trump announced he'd use the Alien Enemies Act, a war measure with a dark history, to deport alleged Venezuelan gang members. The act has only been invoked 3 times in U.S. history, and never outside of wartime. Until now. Let's take a step back and look at how the Alien Enemies Act has been used in the past. Created in 1798 during fears of war with France, the law gave the president the power to imprison or deport immigrants suspected of siding with the French. And while the war never happened, the law stayed on the books. President James Madison first used it during the War of 1812 to target British nationals, requiring them to report to authorities. Those who refused could be deported, though it's unclear how many were actually affected. During World War I, President Woodrow Wilson used the law to detain Germans suspected of aiding the enemy or violating regulations, like bans on firearms and restricted zones. Over 6,000 arrests were made. But perhaps the most noteworthy use of the Alien Enemies Act came during World War II. President Franklin D. Roosevelt used the law to round up those deemed a national security threat, including Japanese, German, and Italian civilians. But soon, it expanded to target not just immigrants, but even U.S. citizens of Japanese descent. Around 120,000 people were forced into internment camps, living in overcrowded livestock pens, facing food shortages, and enduring horrific conditions. The camps didn't shut down until after the war ended in 1946. Decades later, the U.S. government apologized and paid reparations.
This action was taken without trial, without jury. It was based solely on race. We must recognize that the internment of Japanese Americans was just that, a mistake.
It was a shameful chapter in U.S. history. Yet here we are again with Trump reviving this law. The Alien Enemies Act allows the president to detain and deport non-citizens from countries at war with or invading the U.S. And no, we are not at war. But Trump justified his decision by claiming that international criminal gangs, including the Venezuelan Tren de Aragua, are invading the U.S.
They invaded our country. So this isn't, in that sense, this is war.
By framing this as an invasion, Trump is using wartime powers in peacetime to justify rounding up potentially millions of people. So what could this mean for the future? Well, according to the White House, the act gives Trump the power to deport any Venezuelan national 14 or older if his administration claims they're tied to this Venezuelan gang, and has already started sending people to El Salvador, where the government agreed to detain 300 people for a year in exchange for $6 million. This is especially concerning given the country's history of alleged inhumane treatment in its mega prison, which the U.S. State Department itself called harsh and life-threatening. But officials haven't said much about how these recently deported men were labeled as gang members, or if they were given any due process before being flown to El Salvador. And some of them, no known criminal record.
Franco Caraballo is a 26-year-old barber who was living with his wife in Dallas and was detained last month during a routine check-in with ICE. His attorney, Martin Rosenow, showed us DHS documents confirming Caraballo has no criminal history.
Another example, a makeup artist with no known gang affiliations was similarly detained. With questions remaining and lives at stake, the concern grows over how this law could play out today. From racial profiling to the mass targeting of immigrants, many fear history is repeating itself. And legal scholars say this moment is unlike anything we've seen before.
We're in uncharted waters because presidents up until now did not take this kind of open defiance